And I'm recording. Can everyone see my screen? Is that live?
Yep, looks good.
Okay,
Yep.
awesome. I will present. All right, Firebase. Um, for those who don't know what Firebase is, I'll kind of give a brief little overview of all the stuff that it encompasses because it's a lot packed into one thing. To start out with, most people probably know the Firestore aspect of Firebase, if you've heard of it before. Pretty much the database side of things, using WebSockets to get real-time updates from your database rather than constantly requesting, your HTTP requests. So pretty much it is a very quick database that can do these, these updates quite a bit instead of, actually doing all these manual requests. So it's very modern, very sleek, very easy to use. That's probably the first thing most people think of when they think of Firebase, but there's actually a lot more to it. So I'll just kind of go over a few other things. So file storage is also a big deal. I like to call it the Google Drive, but cooler. Essentially, you can store all your files there, very similar to the database side of things, but more for like images, videos, audio, that kind of stuff. We've also got authentication options. A lot of stuff like Google, Facebook, Apple authentication, to name a few things, all integrated into there, super easy to use, very powerful, and it doesn't need a lot of training to actually be able to use, which is pretty cool. As well as hosting and the pricing. So hosting, I use this for my personal site. You can host pretty much any kind of website on there. HTML or React are the two that I've used in the past, but I'm sure there are other options as well. And to start out with, it is free to use, which is awesome if you're just getting started making apps or hosting a website. Until it scales up, of course, and then they kind of have some pretty decent pricing from my experience. All right. So where is Firebase used in general? Like I said, websites are the most common, I would say. I can even show you the data match stuff that we use for UW. Uses Firebase as their backend. I think they mention it on their site somewhere. Let me go see. I don't know if
Yeah,
Kaylin's
data
here.
match does use Firebase.
Oh yeah,
I
Kaylin.
was
I
I
thought
was
you were part of them,
confused.
right? Yeah, I figured.
No.
Very cool. Yeah, so this stuff is hosted back, and maybe you can describe more of that later on. But just a brief example here, as well as any like collaborative apps. This is one of the demos that I found on the Firebase site. And this is pretty much, I think I can share this out to people. How do I, my pads maybe? I think I can just literally give you guys, let me go over to the meetings channel here 1 second. If anyone wants to see some real-time updates, I think anyone can just type in here. I see some guests joining in here. Hello, and you'll probably see that pop in. If anyone wants to type any stuff in there, you'll see live updates, I believe. Yeah, I see some other cursors moving. Look at that. Very cool. So again, that's all due to the Firebase backend. They can store all the edits there very simply, very easy to use. Pretty cool. There you go. All right, that's enough of that. And then games are also a common thing. I wasn't able to find one off the top of my head here, but there are plenty out there that I'm sure there are. If you need any of Google samples to see what they've done, I got this link here. In fact, actually, I've got this presentation. I can just share the link out to everybody. One moment while I do that. All right, there's the link to the slides. I'll put them in the meeting channel. All right, back to the presentation here. So those are some examples of what Firebase has been used on in the past. Plenty of Google examples if you want to go check those out. So you might be wondering, how do I use Firebase? Great question. I'm glad you asked. Like I mentioned before, web is probably the most common platform, but it also is used for iOS apps, Android apps, C++ stuff, and Unity, if you've heard of any of those. The main hub for getting all this Firebase stuff done, it will be in your console, and I can quick show you a little overview of that, as well as the documentation. Actually, I'll quick show documentation first because that's pretty straightforward. So firebase.google.com/docs. This is where you can kind of learn all there is to know about Firebase. getting started and stuff. They've got code labs to kind of take you through some of the basics and some samples. That's where I got all the sample apps. But we'll go over to the console here. So you can see you'll have all your projects here that you've been working on. You can keep them separate. You can see that these are both web apps that I've made, but there's also options for iOS, Android, and I don't know where the C++ is, somewhere around there. So if we go over to, this is something I was working on previously when I was testing this all out. Here is my console for my web dev tutorial project. Like I mentioned before, you've got all these different options built into Firebase that you can use. So for example, we'll go over to the authentication. You can see that I have a couple people signed up already using email and Google. And we have all these different options for sign-in methods, and you can enable them with the click of a button. Like if I wanted to enable, say, Facebook, I just click edit, click enable, and then I'll probably need like an app ID. We can go into that a little bit later though. But just know that there's a lot of different options and there's plenty of documentation to walk you through it. Firestore, this option over here on the left, is where you'll be doing all of your storing of your data, obviously. You might notice that this is different than a SQL backend. NoSQL for Firestore. Pretty much things are organized in collections and documents, very similar to just like a folder structure. You can kind of see the different key value pairs within each document. Pretty cool. And then real-time database is kind of like the older version of Firestore. Still around because people use it, but Firestore has mainly replaced that to my knowledge. I'm sure there are still several people that use it though. I'll also go into storage here. I have nothing for this test app, but just know that you can put files and links to them in here. You can also get the link to go and access it there. But probably the most important thing if you're trying to host a web app is the hosting tab. You can see actually the one that I have is accessible on this domain here. So it'll give you a domain to start out with, and you can even, I'll put this in the meeting by the way. And you can even connect your custom domain pretty easily, especially if you're using Google domains. Very easy. If you're on the same account, it does it pretty much automatically. But it is also possible to do it through other services such as like GoDaddy or whatever else, what have you, for your URL. What else do we got here? And then there's also cloud functions. This is relatively new, but this is a way where you can put like server-side code, to my knowledge. I haven't used it all that much since it's relatively new, but kind of like your NPM server kind of stuff here to do some of those calls. So very cool. Back to our little presentation here. So what does an app look like if you're using Firebase? Another great question. I am so glad you asked. Actually, before I go into that, does anyone have any questions so far? I kind of like sped through all of that. Or I can sit here in silence for another 5 seconds. That is totally fine. Man, is this what professors feel like? Okay, cool. I'll show you what an app looks like then. So what you can do, I'll go partially through the way of doing this. Some of this stuff takes a little bit to load. So I'll use my actual project to show you what it looks like when it's done. But to start out with here, so again, your console is console.firebase.google.com. Oh, I don't know what I did there. Okay. And then for the first time, it'll say like create your first app. But since I've got a couple, I'll just click add project. You'll enter in a name. So let's say like, I don't know, test project or something. You can call it whatever you want. Continue. You can add analytics or not. I always leave it in. It's the default. And then you'll want to say whatever account you want to use. Be careful. If you're signed in under your WISC, it'll make it under your WISC. So if you want to use something else, make sure you create a new one. And like I said, it takes a little bit. This is relatively fast compared to other things like Google Cloud, as I know, is a lot slower than this. But there is that. I can show you what an app would actually look like. So I'll show you one that I have actually set up here. I made all this stuff in HTML, but it is possible in React, and I might go into that later if time allows. But essentially what you'll do is you'll make your normal index.html file. So I've just got some basic like head tags, body, and then some headers and sections to kind of separate all the different things here. In the presentation that I have, wherever that is, at the very end, I have the repo that I'm using, Fireship, if anyone's heard of it. Very helpful for these Firebase tutorials. That's the one I'm going off of here. So we've got, where is this? Oh yeah, app.js. This is where I'm pulling in all of my Firebase stuff. But to start out with your app, the first thing you're going to need to do is actually start your app. And that's what this is here. If it's loaded, I can show you. It is totally fine to keep this API key out here because I will show you a little bit later. You can create some security rules to make sure people aren't doing anything sketchy on your database side of things. But this is totally fine to put in your source code and keep public as long as you've got some security rules. And then you've also got your project ID. This is where you're keeping all of your files in that storage. And there's some other stuff here that is all default. Hopefully I can show you. My project is ready. Oh, that is incredible. Fantastic. So you can see that we'll want to add it to our app first. So I'm going to click that I'm doing a web app. Again, back in that console. And we'll want to call it something. What did I call it before? Test project? Sure. And we want to set up Firebase hosting. We can do this later, but I like to do it here because it's a little bit quicker. And you can see that we'll want to copy this stuff in. You can see that I already have it in my app here. I believe, no, this is Bootstrap stuff. Oh, here we are. The SDK, always required. This is just some stuff to set up Firestore, the auth, and just the app in general. Once we do that, there's our next. To actually set up Firebase in your command line, you'll want to run this command. I believe I put it in here somewhere. I think it's this. Yeah, this line here. And you also want to set up all this stuff before you go and actually go and host it, but I can show you how to do that. So we'll do next. These are your kind of core commands. I also put this in the presentation under the deploy. Firebase login, Firebase init, and deploy. So you want to obviously log into your console. Init actually connects your project on your computer to the actual, like the Firebase project in the cloud, and then you'll deploy it to actually get it onto the web. So that's what all this is. We'll continue. So now it's all set up. You can see I've got it connected to a web app. And another really cool thing about this is if I wanted to add another app, say another web app or like an iOS app or Android, I could do that, have it connect to the same database. So that is very powerful. So if we want to set up our database, or Firestore rather, we'll just go over to that tab and click Create Database. You got two options here. Kind of what I mentioned before with the security rules. You can start in production mode, meaning that things are private and you'll have to set up the rules to allow access. Or if you just want to get really quickly started with this, you can start in test mode, which pretty much means that anyone accessing it can view, modify, edit, delete, all that good stuff. So if you want to do that without tests, you can do that, but I think it does 30 days it'll get rid of that just for your protection unless you change anything. And then I usually go with the default location, but there's plenty of other database locations, and we'll click Enable. So this is just setting up the database again. We'll want to do this for anything that we want to use. If I wanted to use like the hosting, we'll probably want to set up, as well as maybe like the authentication I think we'll want to use. But while that's going, I'll kind of describe what's going on here. So again, to set up everything, we've got these scripts. You can find them in your console, as well as the script to initialize your app with your config. You can see the line that initializes the app. And then all this stuff is really just Bootstrap and random stuff I threw in here to make it look pretty. All right. And then the app that we actually imported here, we will set the authentication for it. So this is saying, connect to the Firebase authentication, and then we'll use this for a bunch of our functions later on. And then all this is just grabbing all the HTML elements to go and edit. Quick plug here. This is why you want to use React if possible for some of these apps. kind of gets rid of all these things that you got to go connect to. So I'll describe a little bit about what the sign-in looks like. So we had a button on the HTML. It is literally as easy as auth.signin with pop-up. All that does is you'll be able to sign in using Google or whatever other things we have set up. But to start out with, I just had Google. And then it is easy as saying auth.signout to sign out. So very simple code for that. I can actually go back. Let's see. Where's it? This one. All right. So we'll go over to our app here. Did I paste that in earlier? Let me go check. Yes, I did. So if anyone wants to go access this, you just, I'm already signed in, but I can click sign out, sign in with Google. It gives me my pop-up here. And I can sign in using one of my Google accounts. So click that, and it'll say that I'm signed in. So very, very simple code to do that, which is, again, another reason that Firebase is so powerful and so simple to use. This is more things to check. Is there a user? If so, that's what prints out like my display name and my user ID. That's unique to me. And then so that's the authentication stuff. Again, if we go back to the console, it's over in this authentication tab. I'll describe that a little bit as, again, we'll want to get started. You'll want to set up all these, like I said before. This one uses Google, so if we were to do that, we'd go and edit the configuration, click enable, and we want to use, these are all my emails, we'll use my personal email here, and click save. And that sets up the Google authentication for this, as easy as that. I believe with the other one here, this is the original. I had to go back and forth between these. Did I set any rules on this? No. Okay, cool. We'll go back to the code then. So for Firestore, if we go back to here, again, this is for the database side of things. We can just create access to it using firebase.firestore, and then we can go and access the database. And again, this is describing stuff from the HTML. And we'll want to first grab a reference to the database. So I think the example we use was things. And you can just go and add stuff to the database. It's really, I mean, not much code to go and add stuff to a database, which is really cool. We can go and add a user ID, a name, and a created at. And I can show you what that looks like on the back end side of things. If we go over to, in our original app, the Firestore section, and we go over to our data here. So we've got our collection of things, and we'll add a document. If it's not specified what the ID of the document is, it'll just make one for you, which is very convenient. And then you can see there's the fields we made, the created at, name, and UID. And if I go over to my actual website and I go and create random thing here, you can see that stuff gets added to the database and gets pulled right into the app, which is really cool. And again, we'll have that on click, and we just click .add to our collection here. And this code right here is whenever we sign out, it just unsubscribes from all that, just to get rid of that connection to the database, essentially. Any questions so far on any of this stuff here? I know it's a lot to take in. I just wanted to show you just how many different things you can do with Firebase. Nothing. All right. Cool. We'll keep going then. Let's go back over to our console here. So we've set up the authentication. You can see the Google stuff is enabled. Firestore. Yes. So if I want people to be able to access this, in my rules over here, this determines if people can access it. Right now you can see it allows access to read and write if the time that the person's accessing is after or is less than, what is this, April 17th. There you go. But you can change this. In my other one here, I believe I have it so that if true. Wait, which one am I looking at? Web dev tutorial. I'll show you one where I've got some better rules. We'll go over to the Doggo database one. This is the, let me go back over to my console. Doggo database is the one for Corgo.net, if anyone's heard of that. It's the one that we made during the hackathon last year. And if we go over to Firestore for this one, I believe our rules are a little more complicated. There we go. Read write if request.auth is not equal to null. So pretty much somebody's got to be signed in to actually make a change or read the changes, which we did just to make sure we know who's making the changes. But you can do much more complex things than what I have here. You can make it so that only people that have the name of the folder can access the folder, or trying to think of other complicated things you could do. I don't know. You can pretty much just change permissions to different folders is essentially what I'm getting at there. I'm sure JP or Kaylin might have a little more knowledge on that than I do. All right. Let's go back over to Firestore. Actually, is that everything I wanted to talk about here? It might be. So this is all like the HTML way of doing things. You can see all the different... Oh, you know what I can show you is deployment. That's what I wanted to do. Go back to my project here. So deploying an actual project. Say I wanted to go and deploy this project. So you can see I'm in my tutorial project here. Get over there, and you'll want to do Firebase init. So this actually connects it to the Firebase instance that I have for the program. Ooh, Firebase, all hashtags, very cool. So we'll say that I'm ready to proceed with a Y, and then we can configure all the things we want to use. So for our example, we're using Firestore. I'll click space on there. We'll use the hosting, I believe, and is there something I'm missing? I think that's it. Surprised auth's not in here. That's confusing. Okay, we'll say enter. Already has a default project. I have set this up before, so that's why it says that, but otherwise it'll take you like through the initial steps. We'll say what file should be used. I've already got this, but it'll create one if you don't have one. We'll just click enter. Do we want to rewrite it? No. Which one do we want to use for indexes? Sure, that looks fine. Oh, uh-oh. Let's say enter. Oh dear, that wasn't supposed to happen. We'll try it again. I shouldn't have typed anything. There we go. Okay. So again, we'll use Firestore, we'll use hosting. I think that's what I had before. Enter, we won't overwrite it. Enter, don't want to overwrite that one. Public directory is fine. This does change if you're doing a React app. I can show you that in just a moment here. And we will configure it as a single page app, meaning that everything's going to start at index.html and we can kind of take things from there. So sure, that's fine. Do we want to set up automatic builds? You can. I don't need to for now, but you can put this to GitHub. That is totally fine. We do not want to overwrite our index.html. We put some good code in there. We don't want to overwrite that. Okay, so now it's initialized, and it's as easy as saying Firebase deploy. And once we type that in, it should say that it is active. Would you like to delete these? No. Okay, so to upload all the files, this one's a pretty small project, so it shouldn't take too long. But again, there's that URL that I put in earlier, I believe. And that's where it's being hosted. So that's how you get to this website. Super simple to do. And I totally recommend this for personal sites. If you don't want to use GitHub Pages, this is a great alternative for that, especially if you want to connect to a database. All right. After this, let's take a look at what it looks like in React using Firebase. So I think what I'll have to do, I'll show you the Corgo.net one. I think it's on, there we go. So here is, I'll get out of here quick. Here is the backend for the Corgo.net project. If you guys check out Corgo.net, it's an actual website. You can go upload docs and stuff. But app.js, this is what a basic React file looks like. You got our imports up in here. And the only difference, thank you, JP, is that we'll have an import for Firebase here. And you can import all the different things like auth, Firestore, storage, all that good stuff. As well as some more complex webhooks that make things a little easier to actually store, or rather not store, but grab stuff from your database pretty easily. So you can see here that we've got our authenticated user. That's what this auth state is for, to check different attributes from our user, like are they logged in? What's their name? What's their UID? That kind of stuff. Makes it super easy. And then we've got our top nav, which down here for signing people in. And very similar to that HTML thing we did, we've got that sign in with Google, where all you do is call to your auth from Firebase and do that pop-up. And it just signs in for you, handles all the errors. Just very, very slick. And the same thing with the sign out is just off that sign out. So same thing as the HTML stuff. If we go over to home, this is kind of where we've got most of our stuff. We've got the dogs and top dogs. Let me go show you what the website looks like here quick. Corgo.net. And you can see, well, I'm already signed in, but otherwise you'd see a blank screen. You can see, I don't know who put my dad on there. Thanks, Owen. But yeah, this is what you'll see. Again, we've got the top dogs and my dogs section, which is why we've got these things being returned in our React stuff. So I can show you some of the calls we do in there. I think we put those here. For example, I think top dogs is what's showing all those images. So essentially what we're doing here is we're, again, making that connection to our database, .collection, and then we can do some stuff with it when we return it. So we can order it by the different scores or descriptions. And you can do this based on whatever attribute you have in your database. You can put limits on it. We have it max out at 25, and then on snapshot, meaning that anytime the database changes, it'll tell the React app to make changes on the page, which is very convenient for us. And then it'll map them all into the pictures that we see there. So very cool. And this is just kind of like formatting it all here. To show you what that looks like on the back end of things, I can show you what that storage looks like. Here's our file storage. We have our images folder here, and we push all these images here. So we store them all here. I have yet to add in the deletion function because we've got a bunch of different random old images here. But we're working on it, I promise. Let's see, where do we go and upload this? I believe the add dog thing does that. So essentially what we'll do there is, I think Ryan made this when we made this originally. This might not have been the greatest way to do things with the on click, and it just grabs the name and the bio and the photo and everything all in one line. Might have been a better idea to put that in a separate function. Let me go see where it's doing the add doggo. There's got to be an upload somewhere. Oh yeah, there we go. .put. So we'll just grab a reference to our storage, firebase.storage.ref, and we can put it in the images folder. That's what that .child does. And then we just put it there, as simple as that. So not that much lines of code, again, to actually get stuff into your database. Super cool. So that's that. And again, for authentication for this app, very similar. We've got all these different random users here, and our sign-in method is using Google. Let's go back to the presentation here. Does anyone have any questions thus far? Anything you're curious about? Any comments? All right. So we went over the deployment stuff for the HTML. It's very similar for the React stuff, although what I will note is for React projects, instead of setting it to your public folder, make sure that you actually compile it and set it to the build folder. That'll make sure that your React app actually runs as a React app as compiled, rather than trying to return a bunch of HTML, which is very confusing. Let me know if you're trying to do that. I can help you through that. One last little note is about the emulators. Essentially what these do is very similar to running like an npm start. they'll be able to run your Firebase project locally rather than on the web app, so you don't have to keep deploying it to go check your changes. So Firebase Serve does that. I believe I can do that with my other project. If we go cd what do I call this again? Tutorial? Share. Or we'll do Firebase Serve. Hopefully this works. There we go. So localhost 5,000 we'll go to. Not 3,000, but 5,000. And there we go. So now my app's hosted locally, but it's still got those connection to the database. That's especially helpful with React stuff, but it also works for your HTML files as well. And there's also capacity to pretend like you're connected to the database. Say you don't have like internet connection, you got to go and test it locally. You can also do that using the emulators. I have not had much experience with that, but love to look more into it if you got any questions on that. And again, these are just some additional resources if you have any additional questions on this. Again, this can you test security rules using the emulator? I believe so. Again, I don't have much experience with it, but I'm pretty sure you can, because if you take a look in your files here, it's got, oh, where is it? I think it's rules. Yeah. So it's got all these different rules here locally. I'm assuming it uses that. So very helpful if you're testing stuff locally. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on Firebase. Just overall, very easy to use, very easy to get into. Nice to have everything all in one place. Free to start out with. I could not ask for more, and I think it's a pretty awesome thing to use. Does anyone have any other questions on Firebase? Open it up. Michael, I thought I saw a question. Alan?
Yeah. At what point do you feel like people transition from like Firebase to implementing their own authentication system?
Um,
And like, what are some of the benefits or like pros and cons of both?
that is a great question. If you're Ryan, you do it right away because he does not like to use templated things. He likes to do his own. Um, I would say if you want to do a lot of customization, you'll probably want to use something other than Firebase. I think Ryan likes to use OAuth. Definitely ask him if you're curious about that. A lot of Firebase's limitations come from its like templated system. It's very easy to get started with. Yeah, JP Ryan does not like Firebase because it's too easy to use. He likes to complicate things. But I will say, yeah, if you want to do more custom things, you might want to look elsewhere. But honestly, everything I've needed to do with it, I've been able to do with Firebase. So if you have any specific questions on like authentication, let us know. We can kind of look into it. But everything I've needed to do, I've been able to do with Firebase.
Okay,
Ah,
cool.
there's
Thank you.
Ryan. If you aren't reinventing the wheel, you aren't doing it right. Yeah, okay. Any other questions at all? Just out of curiosity, has anyone used Firebase before, other than Kaylin? I know.
I have used it before.
Nice. Oh, Michael, there's your question. Okay, what was our inspiration for Kogra.net? I can show you. Uh, where is she? You see this little pupper right here, this Luna? That was the inspiration for Kogra.net. um, we thought it'd be fun to have a little Facebook for dogs. That was our idea behind it. But I also wanted to use a little bit more Firebase. So this is a great way to kind of test the waters out. Any other questions at all?
Are you like a Ratatouille fan?
I
I
am
think I
not,
did that.
but I think JP. Oh no, Ryan did
Oh,
linguine.
it's Ryan.
Oh, seriously. I think JP upvoted all of them though.
Yeah, I did.
I suppose I should probably stop the recording now. Well, thanks to everyone for watching. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording.